What did you think when the Hall of Fame called you?
Well, I was blown away. I was terribly honored, terribly humbled, and very excited. So that I can't tell you how pleased I am.
Now we're reaching people with the Hall of Fame who are maybe the next generation, who weren't here in the 50s, but who came to make the Aspen of today. You know, the people who were here in the 50s made the Aspen that we came to in the 70s, that John came to. But now, John has made a difference in what the visitor sees in Aspen. He's been impactful on what people get when they come here. And it's what you see when you drive down the street. You see his signature.
He is the epitome of the Rotary motto, service above self.
I've often joked that John's kind of like the two statues of Joseph and Mary in the church. He's a fixture and he's there every morning, so you just know he's going to be there. Whatever the problem of the day might be, whether it's heating or plumbing or electrical, or we've got a leak issue or a raccoon in the basement, whatever's going on, John usually seems to know who to talk to and knows him personally to bring about a solution. So.
And I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my brother Mike and I, and with a couple of friends, we came to Aspen in Thanksgiving of 1955. We skied Aspen Mountain. I met Linda on the 29th of December in 1957. We met at a friend's wedding, and that the rest is history. That we met in 1957 and got married in 1965. That interim by me was spent doing some traveling, and I was in the Navy for 3.5 years and did some construction in the Navy. That I was in the Civil Engineer Corps, which is a branch of the Seabees. You know, I kept an eye on Linda through the years. Fortunately, she was still available when I got finished. We came to Aspen in 1967 with a couple of other friends, and that we bought a condominium at the Crestwoods in Snowmass. We came back to Aspen several times after that for the next 4 or 5 years. When Chuck Vidal was who had asked me to come here to work in 1973. Chuck and I had gone to school together at the University of New Mexico. We fell in love with Aspen and decided to make that our home. And we had 3 boys, and that we thought it was a wonderful place to raise children with the outdoor activities. Then when we came to Aspen, one of the wonderful things here, and the thing that we just absolutely loved about it, Chuck Vidal introduced us to a number of his friends, and those people have become lifelong friends of ours. Jack Reese and Tom Anderson and Joe Zanine and so many, many more, John Callahan, and just a great group to be associated with. We love them all.
When he takes someone into his heart, he keeps them there forever, and that's the way he is. So he's a great man that way.
A friend of mine once told me that he says, when you move to a new community, get involved. And so I think that's what we tried to do. The school was so accepting of our children when we first moved here that I got to be very involved in the school activities and working. And I remember working with John and Brian and Christopher and building the playground at the old yellow brick school. The community just opened their hearts to John, that when we found out that he had muscular dystrophy. He was only 3 years old, but we moved up here and the school accepted him, and they would bend over backwards, keep him involved in every activity. You know, that he participated in everything, that went on outdoor ed, and all of the plays, that the outdoor activities, the races, various things like that. The kids were wonderful with him, so that that was another thing that endeared this community to us. So I really appreciated that, and the school was just absolutely wonderful to all of us. So we've got a deep love in our heart for the school district here. And we did a lot of sledding out at Tyhack with families when the rest of the family was skiing. We used to have Saturday family picnics with a lot of our friends, and that while everybody was skiing, and John and I would sled. And I remember Joe Zanine helped me carry John one time all the way to the top of Weller Lake. You know, that everybody just helped. That we were not excluded from anything because of John's disability. Kurt Brendlinger was president of the student body in 1980. That was the year John died, and so the student body that year elected to have a ski day, and they went to the skiing company and that opened Buttermilk Mountain and that all the proceeds from their lift tickets that day for the high school went to the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and so that was really very generous, and that lasted for a number of years.
And we knew that John wasn't going to be around with us forever. Even now, today, 35 years later or whatever it is, I still think about him and smile and giggle at some of the antics that he got us into.
Both he and my mom, dealt with it with a tremendous amount of grace and patience.
St. Mary's Church has always been a big part of my life. Being Irish Catholic, that we felt it was important to continue in the faith. I've been fortunate enough to be able to volunteer through the years, and we feel a great support from St. Mary's in our faith and are looking toward the hereafter. John Keleher had been sort of a meter and greeter at the St. Patrick's dinners, and about 20 years ago that I assumed that position, that John passed the torch on to me, and I have now passed it on to my son Brian. Through that, it helps fund the homeless shelter, so I've worked with that at St. Mary's.
There's so many things that he's involved in. I don't know, neighbor to neighbor, the sanitation district or the thrift shop or whatever. He always seems to have a finger in a certain pie.
I asked him if he would serve on the library board, and he said yes, so he'd be happy to do that. And he served on the board then for 11 years.
Neighbor to Neighbor is a fundraising organization, and so I was chairman, I guess, for 3 years. Tried to coach 5th and 6th grade football program. We just have tried to be involved, as has Linda, and that she's been involved in the thrift shop and the hospital and various things to just be active in the community. We started out with the ski club just as, working on the races when the kids were young. And
he was sometimes chief of starter and chief of course.
So little by little you get more and more involved, and I was very fortunate to have been elected president in 1980 and served in that capacity for 3 years.
When the World Cup came along, we both volunteered and we worked on the crews. John eventually became a crew chief. Along the way, OFAR appointed John the starter and me assistant starter.
And so that I worked in that capacity for about 20 years, and that was really very enjoyable, and that got us out from boot packing and slipping the slopes. Fortunately, in about 1981 or so, I was asked to be the owner's representative on a construction of a house. So for the last 30 years, that's what my work has been, is to be an owner's representative or a construction coordinator on construction projects, and an intermediary between the owner and the architect and the contract as a facilitator and expediter, just to get the project built. One of the first was on the gondola building for the skiing company, and then we followed up with the Little Nell Hotel on that, and I worked on Bump's Restaurant, and looking out across at Tyhack, that we built the warming hut at Tyhack. My most recent project was working with the fire district on their 2 new buildings, and so those were unique. And so that was, they've all just been terrific. The elementary school for the school district, the Silver Tree Hotel out in Snowmass, that did all of the renovation back in the early, mid-90s, I guess it was, for the Aspen Institute on their housing facilities and their health center and their restaurant. Worked on the Koch seminar room for them, the Aspen Center for Physics. And so it plus a number of houses and projects such as that, so that it's been a delightful career for me.
John was my helper, my everything during the construction of the new thrift shop. He grounded me through the process. What we've been able to do in this beautiful new building is double the amount that we've given just in these last couple of years. We're going to have $500,000 that we're giving back to nonprofits. And we had weekly meetings, and I can't tell you how much fun they were. He's funny. So it was really it was a great experience to be able to work with him.
John served as the owner's representative for the building project on a voluntary basis. He wasn't paid. He did lots of wonderful things to make the library look the way that it does today. He would come up with ideas like just taking plain old 2x4s and routing them out to make them look like a good finish for the door frames and the window frames. So if you look around the library, there's an awful lot of his ideas that really help save the taxpayers money.
It's pretty neat to say that that he made the gondola. I think probably the two most exciting buildings for me are the Harris Concert Hall and the Music Tent. Those are neat buildings.
But it was such a wonderful project, thoroughly enjoyable. There's a concrete footer underneath that that's 20 feet wide by 30 feet long by 5 feet deep. So there's a lot of concrete that anchors the tent down to keep it from exploding.
John has been so involved with Rotary.
I was asked by Pete Stone to join Rotary in 1981.
John's been president, has been the head duck for the Ducky Derby, the sergeant at arms.
We've done quite a few things here, working with the Deaf Camp.
And he received the Tom Sardi Award for service in 1999.
John also was a leader for a group study exchange that went to Spain for a couple weeks. Took a big group there. But I think that probably the biggest thing, aside from all the efforts that you did with the Ducky Derby, the Centennial Project that we had, which was out at the Ark, he and Joe Zanini co-chaired that, and we built a big pavilion, and that was our Centennial project that honored the 100-year celebration of Rotary. His real love has been World Community Service, and he co-chaired that for years. I mean, what, 75 years?
One project was distributing books in Guatemala. Did some work on a water project in Nicaragua.
I know very few people that are as selfless as John is.
I think part of the volunteer side of it has rubbed off on Brian and me, and I think that's part of who we are now, is that you give back and you do volunteer and you give your time, and because it's the right thing to do.
It is a high bar to reach up to, but it's a good thing to aspire to be, as a better person.
John would have graduated with the graduating class in 1984 from Aspen High School, and the theme of my address in that was to be a participant.
John's a good athlete. He played softball here. He was at the University of New Mexico. He was on their baseball team. Good skier, good runner. He's running marathons now. He's just an all-around good athlete.
We've just always enjoyed the outdoors. It's been really enjoyable for us. That we did a lot of car camping when the kids were young.
It's always been fun to go out and make a couple turns, and it was never about how many runs you could make or anything. It was just about being outside and being together and having fun.
Brian lives with his family, Alicia and their 3 children down in Carbondale, and Christopher and his wife Brandy live here. They're school teachers in the 8th grade level at the middle school, so that you couldn't get them out of the valley. And right now that my big events on skiing are skiing with my grandchildren, and so I'm pretty familiar with the tree trails over on Buttermilk right now. But they're getting pretty good, so that they're passing me up pretty quickly. There's that old quote there that you pass by this way only once, and you hope to leave the world a better place.
They're an amazing family. They're a great gift to this community.
John is just a great man and a good friend, and he's a wonderful moral character. He's very honest, very sincere, very hardworking. I just can't think of a better friend.
Comb your hair.
It's an honor to be here anyway. He's the nicest man I've ever met in my life.
He deserves it. He has given so much to the community in so many ways.
He just seems like he knows everybody, and everybody thinks the world of him.
It's really important to point to men and women of virtue and people who really contribute and are making a difference in society. And I think John and his wife Linda have done tremendous things for this community, and they're really a part of this town.
John, I think the award is justified, and I'm glad you got it, and the tip of me hat.
So I couldn't think of a more appropriate person to be receiving the Hall of Fame honor and to be inducted on the 21st of January than this man.
Well, thanks very much. Some people get singled out, lightning strikes, for whatever reason, but a great many people are deserving of such an honor.